Hello everybody, welcome to Savage Ink Studios. I'm your host Ink, and before our sketchbook story time today, I just want to let you guys know we've got a lot of cool stuff coming to the channel. We've got the 7 Deadly Sins challenge coming up, which I'm really excited to do. I'm going to try really hard to not only do pieces based on the 7 Deadly Sins, and your votes said that they should be half of my avatar and half of original characters just made up based on the topics. But I also want to try really hard, no promises, but I'm going to try to have stories that correlate to those topics also. So I'm pretty excited to get started on those. I've already got some sketches down. And I also have a couple of collaboration videos coming, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Alright, so, straight into the story then. The time that I was fired for my religion. Now, I considered very heavily not mentioning the name of the company. One, because, I don't really have the energy to have a company coming after me because they don't like what I have to say. But at the same time, I'm really pissed at this situation, even now, but the company as a whole, I was really happy working there. So, but I'm going to, and we'll get there. So, I got a job at Stewart's, which is an ice cream shop, gas station, coffee shop place. And it's actually a really great place to work. If you've got a good manager and a good team, the benefits are good, the pay is good, it's a genuinely good place to work. And I worked there in a really, really bad neighborhood, so even though the clientele was scary bad sometimes, the job was great, and I liked my job. I worked under 2 different managers at the first location that I was at and never had an issue. I was even actually looking at, potentially getting into a management position there. And when I moved, I got transferred to a different location, and the manager there I was cool with, no issues. But when that manager left the company, they brought in a new manager who was, sorry, religious zealot type, I guess. And if you guys have watched my previous videos, you know that the religious zealot types generally don't like me very much, for obvious reasons. This guy that they hired for management was so inappropriate on so many different levels. I mean, between standing in the middle of the store and preaching sermons to the customers, many of whom seemed genuinely uncomfortable with that. There was a television in our Stewart's at that location, and I remember that, the day or the day after gay marriage had been legalized in our area, there was a pride parade thing going on, and he had made a very loud comment about how disgusting that was and how nobody wanted to see that, which, I'm sure most people's reaction is, well, Ink, how do you know that this guy knew that you were gay? Well, my girlfriend had actually happened to, show up in that location, and it was incredibly obvious. So this guy, off the bat, obviously didn't like me very much, gave me a lot of trouble. I remember needing to leave work at one point because my brother was still within his first year of diabetes, and there were a lot of issues, and I was, a primary caretaker of him at this point, and if there was an issue with him, he was obviously going to come first, and it had not been an issue at the other location or under the different manager. And the one time that I had to leave work early because my brother had to go to the hospital, it was a big deal, and he made it seem like this huge inconvenience, even though there was double coverage that day. Point is, he very clearly did not like me. He was always looking for me to do something wrong, but I have a really good work ethic, and it's not easy to do. But he managed to find a way to make matters even worse, I guess. So he obviously couldn't fire me because I'm gay and he doesn't like that, you know. But other than treating me like crap and hoping that I would quit, I remember one summer we had mandatory group meetings. So even if you weren't scheduled that day, you still had to come in for the 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, that it took for the whole team to go in, and the district manager would come in and talk about what's going on with the store, goals, etc., etc. Um, sorry. And so it was the middle of the summer. You know, it's hot, and if you're not working that day, nobody shows up in uniform if they're not working that day. It happened to fall on my day off. I showed up in jeans and a tank top. I have a lot of curves. My tank tops ride up. That's not abnormal. Um, and I had been wearing, low-rise jeans that day. So I went to this meeting, did our thing, and it just, because I'm so chivalrous and all that jazz, I hold the door for everyone behind me when the meeting's over. So I had the door held open, and I was turned and talking to someone who had just walked out the door, and my tank top had pulled up. I have a religious tattoo on my lower back, which I realized after turning around and seeing the look on my manager's face had poked out, and that he had noticed it. And I mean, this guy just looked horrified, as if he saw someone who had like a deadly disease that he was going to catch. The look that he was giving me, because I'm Wiccan, I have a Wiccan symbol on my lower back. And the very next day that I had work, I came in, I went to clock in, and he's like, I need to speak to you in the back room. And I'm like, okay. So I go in the back room, and he's like, yeah, this isn't working out. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'd already been working with the company for probably a little over a year, and there had never been any issues with me because I was a genuinely good worker. And he's like, your employment here just isn't working out. And I'm like, what? Why? And he's like, it's just not working out. We don't think that you're a good fit. I'm like, wait, who's we? We don't think you're a good fit? Like, do you want me to, like, go back to my old store? I'm not getting it. He's like, no, you're fired. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. So my first response was to go home and to call the manager at the old store that I had worked at, which was a little bit further away from me, but it wasn't impossible for me to get to. I had only gotten transferred to the other store because it was literally like a 5-minute walk from where I had moved to, and it would just be a lot easier and convenient with a kid with diabetes. So I called the other manager, and he's like, oh yeah, let me get a hold of district, and I'll just have them move you back to this store. And I'm like, okay, good. Because I knew what it was about, this guy had a problem with me because I liked girls and because I was Wiccan, and he was like this crazy Bible thumper who wouldn't even let non-Christians into the store if it was up to him. So my old manager from my other store said that they were going to have a meeting or something about, whether or not I'd be able to go to their store. And then that manager ended up leaving the company. And at this point, like, yes, could I have sued for discrimination? I absolutely could have. And I would have won because I had not done anything to warrant losing my job. But at the same time, I already had another part-time job that I knew was going to help me out with hours until I could find something else. I had a sick kid on my hands. I had already started the rescue, even though it was much smaller scale than it ended up being eventually. So I didn't have time to have to worry about, okay, well, if there's a lawsuit, then I'm going to have to miss whatever work that I can still have, which means I'll be losing money, and I just don't have the time or the energy with everything that's going on in my life to pursue this lawsuit. So sometime later, I ended up contacting the new manager over there, and I was like, hey, I still really enjoyed this job. The one that I have now is not super great, and I am always looking for extra work. Could you look into whether or not I can come back to this store? And she ended up getting in touch with me later saying that after he had let me go, when the other manager had, called a meeting to see if I could be transferred back to my old store, this fucker had told the district managers and corporate managers or whoever they were meeting with that I had been stealing. Let me tell you guys a little something about me. Y'all don't know me personally, but I'm going to tell you, I've stolen once in my entire life. And I know the exact moment because it's forever ingrained in my mind. I was in second grade, and I stole a Mighty Bean out of some kid's cubbyhole, and by the end of lunch, I felt so bad about it that I put it back. So, I stole like a $3 toy for an hour and felt so awful about myself that I returned it. I'm not a thief, and I'm not a bad worker. I'm actually a really, really hard worker. And despite the fact that I kind of look like a freak, I know how to do my job. And the fact that he went and tried to tell people that I was stealing was just so infuriating because there are cameras there. And I could have very easily taken this to court and been like, pull up the camera records. You can see every part of the store from every angle, and I have never, ever, ever stolen anything. And if you watch me work, I am a really hard worker. If there's anything that I can get in trouble for at work, it would be like working through my lunch break or something like that. If it gets super busy and I'm on my lunch break, I will absolutely hop back on register to make sure the line goes down before getting back to work, which you're technically not supposed to do, but as far as screw-ups that you could do at work, that's it for me. Like, I'm... Ugh. So, I wasn't originally going to name the company in this, but I think the fact that they hired someone who is so homophobic and, like, I'm not sure what the word is for basically being, like, racist against somebody else's religion, religionist or whatever, but the fact that they had someone like that working for their company and representing their company, and the fact that that costed me a job, and no one, there was no official meeting, there was no me signing paperwork, there was me getting fired was done in such an unprofessional way, which was a real shame coming from a company that was such a pleasure to work for prior to this nut job being put in a position of management. So yeah, that's the story of the time that I got fired for my religion. And I wish I had set aside the other things going on in my life and taken it to court. It's probably like way too late for that now, but I should have. And if for nothing else than just to get that guy removed so that the other gay and non-Christian people who work there didn't have to go through the same treatment that I did. But I'm a selfish fuck, and I had other things going on in my life, so I didn't. Alright guys, well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed my story. I hope you enjoyed my sketch of the little rat guy there. If you have any comments, requests, feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. Feel free to like and or subscribe. And if you guys want to be a part of the voting polls for the channel, I have my DeviantArt account in my about description area on my channel here, and you can scoot over there and take part in the polls. I love hearing from you guys, and I definitely try to let my work on the channel reflect what you guys have been asking for. So that's all, and I will see you in the next one.